Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Slowtwitch podcast. Apologies for the long hiatus between episodes, but Eric and I have just been either traveling the world or up to a lot of different Slowtwitch related projects. And so, but we're back. And joining me as always is the one and only Eric Wynn.
We're back, Ryan. It's good to be back. I like this time with you.
It's nice to have conversations that aren't yelling into a phone while one of us is at some event with music pumping in the background and everything else. So,
or dealing with children or whatever life brings to us.
Or German electronics in a car, that decide to go on the absolute fritz this morning. So
yes, yeah, there you go.
Mistake number one. We bought a modern German car.
Is that a mistake? Like, why is that a mistake? German audience is not going to be happy with that.
The electronics are starting to do interesting things, and it threw just about every error code known to man this morning.
What car is it?
It's a Golf Sport Wagon. Nice car.
Yeah.
It's just that the battery had died and some small creature had decided that some of the wiring was extra tasty.
So what does that have to do with the German car?
All of the other electrics that weren't the fuse associated with that wiring.
So wait, hold on, time out. So you allowed your battery to die.
I did not allow it to die.
The battery died. A rodent got into your vehicle, chewed up your electrics, and you're going to blame German engineering? Is that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm glad we're getting to the root of the problem.
If you had everything else that has gone wrong associated with it,
okay,
it's fine.
You sound a little biased, but that's understandable. It's a frustrating moment.
It sounds like I'm tired. But we're not here to talk about my car problems.
No, we're here to talk about the race season and how it's started.
Yeah, no, I mean, and we would be remiss to not mention how it hasn't started, right? Just with World Triathlon's cancellation of the race in Abu Dhabi a week and a half ago, due to incoming inclement weather. When the race was scheduled to take place, you saw on social media plenty of athletes posting about how sunny and lovely and everyone getting their workouts in. But when the rain came, it was shocking just how quickly things got out of hand in Abu Dhabi.
Do you think they made the right call?
I do. Because ultimately, right, like it's not just about whether or not you could safely put on the event, like just purely the pro racing, but everything else that has to happen thereafter, right? So like you have setup, you have tear down, and you need to be able to accomplish all of those things safely. Mm-hmm. And there was no way you were going to be able to tear the entire event down before this weather system came through, at which point you needed to have kind of the maximal amount of time to be able to get all of that equipment and get all of those safe. Yeah. And so, I definitely understand the optics, right? Like when it's sunny and I think it was, something like 35 degrees Celsius, like it looks gorgeous outside. Not a care in the world, but like when you think about the number of people who are putting on that event, who then would have been put into a very dangerous situation, on the backside of that, like you have to understand, like we have to look at the event in its totality.
Yeah, and the people working the event.
Right.
It was interesting to to see the knee-jerk reactions of some people, particularly in our forum, where they were bashing the decision to cancel it because they were saying, "Oh, it could have happened." Well, it could have, but it still would have ended bad for a lot of other people. And when you're
Yeah,
making
and
big decisions, like you have to take into consideration of everybody, not just the athletes that are there to race one particular aspect of the event.
again, it's the optics of it, right? Like where the weather looks absolutely perfect, right? And it's just like, what are we doing? But you know, it is that examination of everything that has to go on with an event of that scale, right? And being able to pull it apart, and get people where they need to be. Um, I also understand, especially with athletes who are going through the Olympic qualification cycle right now, like the importance of every single event. That's why World Triathlon has since, announced expanded start lists for the forthcoming World Cups and the World Triathlon Championship Series events, leading through the qualification cycle, because they know, like, athletes are dependent on gathering points. And when you have a full on cancellation, like, you're really removing opportunity from numerous athletes from, just about every country, because no one's selection is really fully done. Um, maximize their opportunities to be able to make their case to make a team.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people were able to capitalize that, cancellation in Miami. Other athletes had an opportunity to do so and they did not, which was
Well,
sad
I
to
mean,
see.
you know, uh, focusing more on the U.S. women's side of the equation, right? So you had Gwen Jorgensen, who wound up in a situation where she's unable to race, and then Katie Zaferis, who is trying to earn as many points as possible to even make it to Yokohama for the start there. Um, Unfortunately, dropped out of the race, out of the lead in Miami.
Yeah. Yeah. Just did not give, and she should be the first one to admit this because we talked to her. She did not give that track enough credit for how hot it gets. Like, not at all. She was out there training a couple days before, and she kind of made jokes of, "Oh, it's not that hot." Then you get on this track that has a circular wind and all of that concrete, and she just melted,
Yeah, and,
absolutely melted.
and then like, we'll get into kind of the speedway's impact a little bit with the T100 event and everything, because you were there all weekend long. Um, but I think people underestimate just how, like, certain places kind of create their own climate, and like these speedways, because of the banking and everything else, like, they almost become heat domes, right, where everything just sort of stays trapped over the top of it. And like, yeah, it's like, oh, it's only, mid 80s, but out on the track, between the reflection of the sun and everything else, like, it can easily spike up over 100 degrees. And if you're not ready for that sort of jolt to the system, it's going to have a massive impact on you.
Oh, it totally gets that high. I mean, that was, if you watch part of the T100 series, this particularly last weekend, it showed Emma a lot when, you know, I believe it was last year or 2 years ago when she collapsed and I was right there. That was my biggest concern with making sure that she was okay, is because I saw this, female in her basically swimsuit on concrete that was 120 degrees. And I was like, she's going to have third degree burns if she continues to lay here any longer, and it was like, I knew she was going to be okay, but we need to move her like instantly, because it's just as hot on those tracks as it is during the marathon in Kona. Like, I don't care who you are, it's that hot. And it can be that windy.
Yeah, no, and I think that's one of the other things that surprises people because, they're like, "Oh, it's this flat environment and like the wind doesn't care. Like it just sits in there and it swirls." And so like you can somehow manage to have a headwind for the entire ride that you're out there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like
So
living in Colorado.
little bit. So just backing up a little bit, right? So you were able to attend the full slate of events that took place in Miami a week and a half ago. So that included the America's Cup race put on by World Triathlon.
Mm-hmm.
Clash Endurance had its own series of events, and then
Mm-hmm.
kind of the uh, main event or showcase were the two T100 events. First ones under that banner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what was it like? Just kind of walking in for the first time and like having all of these various kind of organizations all putting on a race at basically the same time.
It was a massive disorganized mess. Is what it was. Yeah.
so
It
so
was,
how so?
well, it was, it was four groups of individual like organizations,
Mhm.
um, trying to do four different things and almost being successful with communication, but not quite.
Got it. And of the
So you had USA Triathlon there trying to do stuff with the para team. You had World Triathlon trying to do stuff with their elite race.
Mhm.
You had Clash putting on events kind of sporadically throughout the weekend. And then you had, of course, the PTO that put on their event on their day. And everyone thought that it was a Taylor Swift concert when it came to importance, media security, things like that. Um, I've never seen so many officials in an area at one time arguing about rules, regulations, where things needed to be. Um, it was it was it was chaos. It was the most chaotic experience I've ever had when it came to a triathlon race in the 24 years of going to races. You would have thought that we were at a world championships when it came to the level of scrutiny that we as media had, particularly just on Sunday. Like every other organization didn't really care where we were at, right? Like we had filled out our media credentials, Blair at Clash did a great job at communicating what we could and couldn't do going in beforehand. And then we got there and everything just kept changing every single day, which makes things difficult for everyone because we were there. We spent a lot of money to get there. We wanted to do certain things so that we could talk about the races. And there was no consistency with where we could have access to, what we could do. That it just changed all the time.
and to be clear, you're talking about like your the
Everything.
Saturday experience, like
No,
going.
even with World Triathlon, it was the same thing. Like,
Okay.
yeah, they didn't want us in certain places, and it was just weird. There was no defined. This is how it's going to work for the entire weekend. The only race series that I felt like that was happening over the weekend where we had an understanding was all of Clash's stuff, because Clash was ultimately responsible for media. Like we checked in
Right.
with Clash, right? Like, and that was how it was supposed to work from the beginning. When we talked with Clash, months ago, when it was made public that the PTO was going to be doing the thing, we had those conversations with them,
Mhm.
and we were told one thing, and then we experienced something completely different when we were on site. And so, and that's frustrating for everybody. I'm sure it was frustrating for the PTO because, you had a bunch of media like me who were just complaining and whining in their opinion of the excess. When the reality of it was like, we would have never shown up to talk about this race if we would have known the access that we were going to not have when it came to. And I'm not talking like, I don't need like, you know, full access to the track, but when you tell me in an email the day before the race that we're going to have 6 dedicated media pins, and we arrive and 4 out of those 6 are general viewing pins with all the rest of the spectators, like, yeah, it's just, it's the same old thing, right? It's half truths. So, and that's
Yeah,
what the most frustrating part about it to me was, just tell us up front what's really going to happen so that we can plan accordingly.
and I think part of what our specific struggle is right, like as endemic media, like we're here to almost help further the story, right? Like we want to cover these races and these athletes, right? And be able to help tell um, the story of what's happening. And if we're extremely limited in terms of what our access is, right? Like to your point, like if it's the same as the general viewing public, well, what do you need Eric or myself at an event for? Right? Like you don't. We could just have some, like, I'm sure we had forum members who, were there with an iPhone, like, and we could have gotten 85% of the way there, right? Like, not diminishing what you do and what the, but,
Well,
um,
yeah, I mean, look, the reality of it is the PTO can do whatever they want, right?
yeah,
Like if they choose this route, which is what I believe they're choosing, and that is that they want to, basically 100% own anything that's cool or unique that happens from a photography or video perspective. That's fine, but we're not going to show up because we can't tell a unique visual story. And so if we can't tell a unique visual story, then there's no reason for us to be there because we can't give our community anything that's unique or special.
right.
And so, if the PTO wants media, endemic media, the large publications, us, Triathlete, Triathlete Canada, then we have to figure out something better than being told no. Because at the end of the day, that's what they really wanted to do. Like that was the conversation that we started to hear 2 days before was that you're not going to have any access to the track. We will provide you imagery, which is fine again, right? But let us know that months before we arrive.
Yeah. And I mean, like, not to get super inside baseball, right? But like, one of the things that I, as editor in chief, really struggle with the idea of pool reporting and, imagery like that is if everything is PTO owned, right? Like they want to own the imagery, they want to provide it to us. They can also revoke that at any point in time, right? Like it's not a
which is
irrevocable license that they
which is
have.
right, which is what I try to have the conversation with them about because it's we don't have a contract with you, right? That says that we have unlimited usage for editorial purposes for your images. So 3 years from now, when someone decides to scan our website and that they're a photographer that took this and I don't have a contract with them, like we're using images that we don't have rights to. And we don't have those issues when it comes to Xterra. We don't have those issues when it comes to Ironman because those are all giddied, contracted image, photographers that have given long-term usage rights. And we have that in our media contracts with them. We don't have that with the PTO. We have a lot of really like they hire a very talented pool of videographers and photographers to shoot. Some of the best guys in the industry and females in the industry are there shooting, but I have no idea what those contracts look like. I have no idea what those rice usage looks like. And so I'm not going to put it on a site, and neither is anybody else that runs a big editorial site and give them credit for it. Like I'm just not going to do it. We're either going to do it ourselves and we're going to tell a unique story, or we're not going to tell the story at all.
Yeah, and I mean it's hard, like, because we've been on the receiving end of, we thought we had rights to certain imagery, and then as it turns out, like the photographer or somebody else didn't grant a full license, and then we've got to go pay up for it. And
Yeah.
like there's 10 PTO, or there's 8 T100 races that are supposed to happen this year. That's gonna effectively be 16 different editorial stories just from a race coverage perspective. And if we use any of it in our preview articles, right, like this gets expensive in a hurry when you have to pay on a per image basis for every alleged rights violation.
Yeah.
um and that, you know that's a lot of budget that we could use elsewhere to tell other stories that we're very much interested in. Um, and so that is where, like one of the things that I think, you know, the PTO really kind of has to think about in terms of, are they going to like, do they really want to own all their own media, or like, how are we going to work together to help tell the story that they're looking to say?
Well, and that's the other question is because it seems like it in the past it's been their way or the highway, right? Like it because we've experienced that where we have been honest in our editorial, which we always strive to be. And the feedback was, why did you say that? Well, because it's truthful, like it's factual, like you didn't have a lot of people at the race. I don't know what to tell you. Like we thought your race production was awesome. We encourage everybody to show up to it because if anyone's spending money to have a really good experience, you're the top of the list, right? Like if you're looking for, the most bang for your buck, you're going to get it at a PTO event because the amount of money that's being spent at those to have a good experience is probably the best in the industry. But if you've only got 400 people that show up to a race, we have to talk about that. Like we can't just not. So it's a challenge that I hope we can work with them on because, we all can appreciate what they're trying to do.
Right.
I don't think they're doing it in a very responsible manner personally, but I still appreciate it and I still hope that it works. And if it's going to work, then everyone kind of needs to play their role and
Right.
trying to make sure that it is productive long term. And yeah, so it's really in their court of whether or not they want media to be a part of it or if they just want to continue to buy their impressions.
Now, you kind of mentioned your experience in terms of like stuff feeling extremely disorganized, and you're coming at it, from both a media and, race production experience, right? Like, what did you see in terms of like athlete experience? Like, was that sort of like tension visible there, or was it something that was kind of less noticeable if, say, you don't work in the industry?
I don't think if you don't work in the industry that you would see a lot of it. I think the people that rightfully could have beef would be coaches, spouses. The PTO did this weird thing, and Challenge Roth does the same thing, where they have these athlete briefings, and literally the only people that are allowed in the athlete briefing is the PTO media and the athletes. And I think even the PTO media was kicked out at some point, um, which I think is a mistake because and they say that, oh, no media because we want the athletes to feel comfortable. Well, okay, but I personally don't think that there's anybody in there that is uncomfortable with Kevin or myself being present, taking pictures. I definitely don't think that they would feel uncomfortable in the fact that, like, we understand what's going on from a race standpoint, because there's a lot of information to take in, and athletes tend to forget certain things. And, one of the things that I was trying to explain to, one of the representatives from the PTO is, I don't think you take into consideration how small this group of individuals are and how much we rely on each other to get through these events. Like, athletes rely heavily on their coaches to help them remember rules, regulations, process. They rely heavily on spouses to help them through that. They rely on a lot of media to help them through that. I mean, it's a close, tight community. And for the people that are in it, that are passionate about it, we're all there to try to help everyone. I mean, we just are. I mean, there's not a single athlete that I wouldn't help legally during a race. There's not a single athlete that I wouldn't cheer for during a race. You know, um, it's embedded in who we are as, community members. And, obviously we have our favorites and we want certain people to win, and we don't really care if other people win. But at the same time, when it comes to like human interaction, like, we're there for them.
Right.
And I'll use a perfect example, right? Like, um, Mark from Trek. Um, there is not a single athlete that has a bike that shows up to a race that Mark would not help. I don't care if the athlete hates Trek. I, Mark is
Right.
going to help that athlete. He is the bread and butter of the sport. And I think there's so many more people out there that are just like Mark when it comes to helping and assisting. And so it's just little things like that I look at, and I'm like, I'm like, do you not take anything that has been historically proven to be good or bad into taken to consideration when you're planning your world domination of television, of, broadcasting television of triathlon? Because, you know, there's been a lot of big organizations that took this approach with media. It didn't work for them. It's
Right.
probably not going to work for you. There's been a lot of people that have taken this approach where, you only get these athletes together and nobody else can listen to the rules and regulations or anything else that's going on for the, it doesn't work well, you know? And so it's just little things like that I look at and I'm like, man, those are such easy fixes. Like, why can't we come to better terms with that?
Well,
Um,
so I think there's a couple of things that come out of that, right? So first, from the athlete briefing perspective, it's interesting because, you look at other racing series, right? Like Formula One for, a couple of years, like they would create YouTube clips of their drivers briefing, right? Like where they would talk with um, the then head steward of the series and like have a back and forth about incidents that might have happened, like things that they as drivers are seeing, like, and it was a really unique perspective, and that was something that I think, as we're looking at different ideas that may or may not be something that could be worthwhile, right? Like you look at the behemoth that is Formula One management now. um, that could be one thing. But to the other point, this is part of the growing pains, right, of going through the really kind of smaller, tight knit community. Everyone is a member of the same tribe kind of thing, as we try, like, or at least the PTO is trying to branch this out and make the sport seem more mainstream, right? Because, you know, if you get bigger, right, like you look at other individual sports like golf or tennis, because, it is way more um, diverse in terms of viewpoint. It's more diverse in terms of who supports who and everything else. Like there's there's less of that kind of, oh, we're all members of the same club and trying to pull for one another. There's more, um, for lack of a better term, there's more divisiveness. And that's probably going to be part of what happens, assuming that the PTO is successful in its endeavor to kind of make this a much bigger broadcast sport.
Yeah, and I think they're learning lessons, and I'm sure that they learned a ton of lessons in Miami. I'm sure everyone learned a ton of lessons in Miami. Um, I hope that some of those lessons that they learned is, do we need a line judge from USAT, from World Triathlon, and from T100 to all three fly in, so that you can work for a couple of hours? Or do we just need one line judge that can tell, whether or not somebody bypassed the dismount line? I didn't take a full count, but there was a lot of staff in Miami. Like I would guess to say that there was more administrative staff than there were spectators when it actually came to like the women's race. Like if you counted all the administrative staff between USA Triathlon, World Triathlon, and the PTO that was like flown in to put on these,
Yeah.
there was probably more staff than there was actually spectators at the venue during the women's race itself. And I'm sure, I hope that they're looking at that, because to me, that's a lot of wasted money and a lot of wasted assets.
Well, it also just looks brutal on the broadcast, right? Like, and that was one of the things that I think the PTO was really successful in a couple of their venues last year, like creating that dynamic party atmosphere, like something that looks really compelling on TV. Like
Yeah, Milwaukee.
Miami, unfortunately, looked empty, just
It was.
pure empty.
It was empty. It was completely empty. And instead of, going with the flow of this is empty, we should let more people into this area, they stuck hard on like, no, you can't be here unless you have credentials. You can't do this if you have like there needs to be more individuals associated with the company that have a larger, deep rooted history in the sport that can make quick decisions based on, gut and years of being around versus, oh, this is this thing that we agreed on 2 weeks ago when we thought that this other thing was going to be different. Um, So, I think there was a lot of lessons learned. There was a lot of lessons learned on us. Like rightfully so, didn't reach out to Anthony and double check to make sure that media credentials were going to be like Clash said that they were going to be. And I should have, because if I would have known that, we were going to be in the situation that we wouldn't have flown out and spent the money to go cover the event. We just wouldn't have done it. And it would have saved a lot of headache and time and effort and frustration. So that's on me. Hopefully we can have those conversations if we choose to go cover another race at some point. I think we could provide the T100 series a lot of really cool things, particularly with our community. And so I want to open that dialogue with the people at the PTO to start to have those conversations. Things that only really at the end of the day, Slowtwitch can probably make cool within the community. But we'll see how that goes. It's going to be interesting to watch the rest of the series because, in a environment that was so controllable where, cause you got Bill Christie involved in this, right? Like, I'm sorry, but I don't think that there's another human being that's more passionate about triathlon that's putting on events than him. And there's definitely not anyone that has the ability to maneuver and do whatever they want inside real estate than him. And it was still a massive cluster. And so I worry what it's going to be like, when they're having to deal with city permits and, all the other logistics that go into other, like what is San Francisco going to be like if there's not lessons learned? Because like, where are they going to race? What's it going to like? Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, you bring up a really good point, right? Like with the speedway environment, like you have full control over your domain, right? Like you don't have, police deciding how an intersection is going to work or anything else, right? Like it's just
No, you're in the speedway. If you want to
there's
do it and it can be done,
there's
it
yeah.
can be done. Yeah. Yeah.
Um
Yeah. They could
and
have easily rented more internal lights for the women's race. Like they could have done that. Like, I don't know why they didn't, but they could have, right? Like that's something that could have been done.
yeah, and I mean thankfully, shout out to Kristen Jenny for the interview with India Lee that's on our front page. But thankfully it looked worse than say the athletes say they were experiencing. But you can't be riding in the dark. Like that's
Yeah.
basic 101.
I mean, it
It was
wasn't
pretty
ideal.
dark. It was pretty
Yeah,
dark.
it was where the really at the end of the day, the big challenge was two things. The first challenge was that you were riding at dusk. And so particularly on a race course with a lot of different directional changes and a lot of different, there was a good reason for you to have a visor that had sun shield, right? And that became the issue later, was because if you were just riding with a clear, visor, or if you didn't have a visor at all and you were able to dump your sunglasses, it's not like you were going to crash out there because it was too dark. But if you didn't have the ability to remove that, you 100% could crash out there because it was too dark, because you had this thing in front of your eyes that were making it way darker than it really was, right? So that was an issue. And that's something going back, like, why wasn't that accounted for? Like, of all the people that were flown in, right? Like someone on that staff should have accounted for that. And instead, what they were doing was telling women athletes during a race to slow down during a race. Like, slow down, like every single corner, right? Which is good, you know, because you don't, safety's first, but at the same time, like I remember Sky talking about it. She was just like, it was just so ironic. Like, you know, like they're telling me to slow down. I'm like, yeah, I'm literally in the middle of a race. Like, okay, like every single corner. Um, but I will say that, you know, it was not as dark as the broadcast made it seem, just like it wasn't as bright as the broadcast made it seem either. The ISO like settings on those cameras were way off. Like, yeah, like way off. Like under the lights, it was not that bright. In the dark, it was not that dark.
Right.
It was the extreme of both. So, um, but, and then the other thing that it was just the other lesson that I hope that they learned is, you know, the graphics were awesome, but like, you got to do more than just the top 10. Like if you're trying to get 20 people to race, like you got to have every single one of, particularly on a lap course like that. Like you've got all the GPS trackers, you've got everything. Like there should be 20, every single person racing should have their own graphic. And because
And
they missed a lot of opportunities there with like the big story, like Sam Wong, like coming out 18th and finishing second. Like it wasn't until like the run where people really started to like talk about him or know that he was like moving up the ranks.
so I really kind of want to focus in on this component of things, right? Because you know, the the kind of gold standard for triathlon broadcasts has been that PTO championships race in 2020 that was, you know, held and combined with I think that was what Challenge Daytona
Yeah.
was the race, right? Which has essentially evolved into the Clash Endurance team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you had NASCAR Productions, you had the Clash people, you had the PTO, right? Like, so you have the same ingredients here. Um, and the reason that that broadcast was so good was you had the combination of right cameras at right places. You had a full graphics presentation that made it clear who was moving through the field. So that way you could see stuff like Matt Hansen mowing people down,
Mm-hmm.
even though, you know, like he was nowhere near the front of the race for a long period of time. So you had that combination of really good direction, um, good commentary, and everything. So we thought, like, we're getting the same ingredients, and this is kind of like the cake we're gonna get back out of it. Um, and unfortunately, you know, that just was not what came out as the final broadcast product for the Miami event this year.
No,
Um,
not at all.
you know, like it was there were not enough graphics, right? Like if there's only 20 people racing, like you got to have all 20 like for a graphic. And yeah, it's going to look like crap as people DNF at the rate that they DNF'd at this particular race. But,
Is it
you know,
though? Or is
that's
or
part
is
of
it
the
talking about, right?
well,
Like,
it's I mean, there's only 20 cars on a Formula 1 circuit at any one point in time. They show all 20 of them even when there's only 11 of them that finish, right? Like they say that, you know, they retired, right? It happens. Um but you have live timing. It helps feed your commentary team to be able to provide entertainment because, you know, even though the T100 series, it's shorter than a 70.3 event. Like you're still talking for 3 hours, and that is a heavy lift to
it's
have for your commentary team.
it's
Um,
boring.
it
Like
can be.
you have to have
Um,
those things that you know that can interrupt any time frame where there's not a lot that's going on, and you've got to
right.
have a production manager in the background that understands the sport well enough to be able to cut back and forth with those. And that's going to be the challenge when it comes to broadcasting these things, because who is that production manager in the back, and what services they're paying to be able to do that? You know,
Yeah, and I mean,
I don't think they had the same amount of cameras running.
like I don't think that there was any way that they could have, right? Like they're just like there's no way that there wasn't more footage available, because like you would have shown some of it. Like, but we had the classic like focus on the leader for almost an hour at a time, right? Like never
Yeah.
moving a camera at all. And like I felt like the commentating team did a good job throughout, but we lost the full audio feed for an extended period of time too. So like now not only do you have a single camera angle, but like there's nothing to go with it.
Yeah,
And
I heard
and
the
that's
audio
just
was cut out for like an hour, which,
it's bad. Like
yeah,
it's
that
just
just, yeah, that just sucks.
um
That
and
sucks for everybody.
and what it comes down to, right? Like and this is what we've said a few times, right? Like the PTO's stated mission is that they're going to elevate triathlon to be this broadcast worthy, like world class sport. So their measuring stick is not, your outside watch Ironman live broadcast, right? Like that's, considered your bare minimum for a triathlon broadcast at this point, right? It is, what would this feel like if this were on ESPN or, Sky Sports or, Eurosport, which in the case of, certain markets, like it is on Eurosport, right? Like
Yeah.
we're talking
Mhm.
like actual broadcast. That's not living up to the standard that you're setting for yourself. And I don't think any of them would say that they did.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be
Uh,
interesting to actually get some, you know, off the record conversations where they would
I
be
mean, I
truly
think,
honest about what they thought, because there was a lot of good things that they did, and then there was other things where, I mean, I said it on the forum. I'm like, what the fuck, are we seriously doing this right now? Like,
yeah. I mean, from like just purely from an event production standpoint, right? Like the miss on lights is one thing, but for the most part, like what you could see out of the broadcast looked like a fairly well put together you know professional triathlon event, right?
yeah,
So like from that end of things, like everything's normal, right? And I think they should take some degree of credit for that end of things, right? And of course, like you got to give it to the Clash people, who are some of the best logistics people in the business today. Like they know how to put on a really good triathlon event. That's really good, but that's not the only measuring stick that you have out there.
yeah, agreed. Um, it's interesting to talk to the athletes because, obviously they're contracted. They want it to work the best that they can. Um, some of them are obviously more open about grievances that they have than others. Um, I don't think that for the most part they had any real honest beef with how things went down over the course. I think the biggest miss was the fact that like there wasn't any food at the venue on Thursday, which was like a long day for the athletes. Like they were just because the way that where the track is and I don't know. I honestly don't know if anyone from the PTO ever came out to the track before the event. I don't know if they had a clue the fact that like the homestead is kind of in the middle of nowhere, right? Like they always say like Miami, it's not in Miami. It's the homestead. It's like 45 minutes south of Miami, and it's a racetrack in the middle of nowhere. Like that's the whole point of it. And so, the timing to make sure that everything was going, and there was a lot of, things outside of the control, because it was a last minute decision to host it at the homestead. They've already had races that were scheduled. They had USAT there. They had World Triathlon there. And so there was so much stuff going on. But that made the athletes get there, and they really didn't have time to go anywhere else in between the things that they had to accomplish that day. And so you just had all of these, professional athletes. There was no food vendors, there was nothing, and they couldn't really get back and forth in time to go. So, you had, kind bars and water, and, and then you had certain athletes that had, maybe asked the right questions and they brought their own food. And then you had other athletes that, were being fed by Mark at Trek, who, went out and bought a bunch of, sandwiches. And I remember sitting, watching Trek athletes and non-Trek athletes being fed by Mark because they were fucking starving. And you're just kind of like, wow, like how much money are we spending here? And we don't have food for the athletes. Like, okay.
I mean, on the flip side, and I told you this when you relayed this story to me, I'm like, how many of these professional athletes, meaning it's their job, knew whether or not there was going to be food there?
Yeah,
like, plan, folks. Like, come on. Little bit of planning.
Yeah, it goes both ways. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like some of the gripe was, why do we have to be here? Cause it's a big ask. Like they want athletes flying in on like Tuesday, right? Like Monday, Tuesday. But at the same time, it's like, athletes don't want to sit in interviews when, Thursday or Friday before the race either. So it's like, okay, if you're going to have all of these interviews done, if you're going to do all of these things, at some point it has to get done. So you're either going to have those the day before the race, or you're going to come in a couple of days before the race so that all of it can get done. And I don't know if they're going to be doing the same thing at every single event. Like, I don't know if they'll do, pictures at every single event, or if it's just this one and it's heavy loaded. But, it's like they say with any other first race of the season, cobwebs need to be, dusted off,
cleared out. Yeah. And I mean, to your
that happened
to that, right? Like, so, one, going back to like, if this is triathlon on a world global stage, right? Like, you're going to have media obligations, like stuff's going to have to get done. And perhaps, like that's part of one of the things where, like the PTO will look for us endemic media, like to have kind of more of an opportunity in that environment versus like, say, race day and everything else. But also, right, like with it being the first race of the year, and I mean, there's still a lot of contracted athletes who had skipped out on Miami and will be making their debut in Singapore. And so maybe their experience is going to be a bit more hectic than, say, someone who raced in Miami who is also choosing to race in Singapore. But, like, you did get a contract for some of this stuff too, right? Like that was one of the big perks of choosing to race T100 was like,
oh, they're getting paid. Like 100%, yeah. They're getting paid.
Like, yes, we all love to complain about our jobs at one point or another. But like,
that's what the money's for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope they get to figure it out. I really do. And I hope we can figure it out with them. I don't want to not talk about the series and stuff. Like, I want to support it.
I mean, we did that last year, and I didn't love us, not covering.
Yeah, but the reason we didn't cover the PTO events is the same thing that just happened in Miami.
Agreed.
So, I mean, whatever.
It does come down to what role do they want endemic media to play, right? Like, do they really want us there?
Yeah.
And do they want us to help tell their story, or do they want to do it all themselves?
Well, they do want us there. It seems like they want us there to do what they want us to do. And that's how it's supposed to be. And that just doesn't work for us.
That has never been Slowtwitch
No,
and never will be.
we're not a regurgitation of a press release. Like we haven't ever been that. We never will be. We're going to give our community new things, interesting things, from our point of view. Like that's what we do. And there's so many other things that we can spend our time doing, right? We're a small little organization. We like none of you work full time, like I don't think
We
people
are all
realize
small
that.
but mighty.
Yeah, and we've got this huge abyss of community members that come onto the site every single month. And, we need to focus on them and what's important to them. And, the stuff that they like reading and the stuff that they don't like reading about. So, and travel's expensive. Like it's hard. So
And it's not getting cheaper.
no, it's not at all. No. Um, and we've also got to focus on other things outside of just triathlon, like between, Super League, Ironman, um, anything that we potentially might do with the PTO in the future. Um, our community is more than just triathlon and triathletes these days. They're really big into gravel racing. They're really big into trail running. And there's a lot of cool events out there that allow us to do us. And so we're going to focus on the events and the types of events that our community participates in with the event organizers that allow us to be true to who we are. And that is, as we show up, we're photojournalists. We tell stories visually and through words. And that's what we're going to go focus on in 2024.
Yeah. Right there with you.
So it's going to
So
be good. What's next for you, Ryan? Do we have any cool and interesting things that are coming on the site?
I do know that Dan is working on a piece or two at the moment. We have Ryan Risch, who has a couple of things that he is working through.
We've got some new writers. Talk to us a little bit about some new writers.
This is part of why we have not been podcasting. Is I've been a man on a mission to find as many writers and doing writing myself to feed the editorial beast that is Slowtwitch. And so we've added a few longtime forum members as now contributors. One of them is Boots. He runs Fleet Feet, a couple of Fleet Feet stores in upstate New York. Known him forever. So he's doing a lot of footwear reviews for us now. Kristen Jenny is doing some interviews with us. She's been in endemic media for a long time. She's doing a great job with her pieces. David is our kind of our pro triathlon beat writer for the most part. He's the one who produced kind of the content, the written content around Miami. Did a really, really good job on that stuff. And there's more coming, which is really cool. Seeing a lot of newer voices kind of adding to and helps kind of like augment some of the work that you, myself, and Dan have been doing, and Jordan, of course, too, for the last year and a half. So it'll be really, really, really good. It's just, it's a lot to find new people to write, go through their samples, provide them feedback, and see how they handle that feedback, because sometimes I can be a brutal editor, of which you are intimately familiar with.
Yeah, but if they can't handle you, it's going to be really hard for them to handle some of the individuals that are going to give them a piece of their mind.
Yeah, I mean, and it was interesting because somebody asked the question whether or not you have to be a forum member in order to, be a writer on the front page. And the answer is no, right? Like if you just want to write for us and you don't necessarily want to play in the forum, that's pretty cool. Like, your piece is probably going to get talked about in the forum, and whether you want to engage in a dialogue there or in the comments under your article or on social, however you want to do it. I do think, some of that interactive component is one of the things that makes Slowtwitch. But it's not like it's mandatory. But like, there are some, like Boots, who have come from the forum and now have quote unquote graduated to the main page of the site. That's how I got my start at Slowtwitch. But it is it's a
Well,
process to
outside
find
of
new writers.
yeah, outside of Dan, I think that's how everyone has gotten their start at Slow Twitch. Except me, I was never big into the forum. I was just always
I
trying
can
to put up
confirm
photos.
you.
Yeah, I don't
And the
understand
chief
the forum at
janitor
all.
was
Yeah, I know.
late at.
But yeah, I leave that to you and Dan, the experts. We do have an update coming to the website, which will be cool. Jordan is working on widening the website so that we can actually post larger images.
I mean, we're getting to 2012. No,
Almost, almost.
no, it's like our power has traditionally been in writing and in very specific photojournalism, and you know our core page template has proven to be a larger limiter on some of the work that you and others have wanted to do for us. And so, like, it's one of those things that's kind of overdue. And I think it's just going to help improve the visual experience that people will have within our articles.
Yeah, I agree. Um, well, thanks for joining, everybody. I think we're done for this episode. What other episode? This is like the first one of 2024, isn't it?
No, the Jason West episode is the
Oh, that's
first
right.
episode.
That's
You can't
right.
forget about poor Jason.
I know.
Come on
Yeah,
now.
I know. That's actually sad of me that I forgot about that. But time flies. Oh,
Time is flying.
it's
Before we know
almost.
it, it's going to be Oceanside time.
I know. It's pretty insane. Oh. All right. Well, thanks for joining, everybody. We will actually talk to you next week because we've got Jimmy Riccatella on the podcast later this week. We are diving into the new rules and old rules that have been around for a really, really long time that people just somehow think that they're new rules. So
They were not highlighted in green text. They are not new.
it's gonna be good. We're gonna have a lot of visuals with this one.
Outstanding. So thanks, everybody.